Okay, so I am going to not use slides. I'm going to do this live. So I wanted to give you a couple of updates. Just refreshers, reminders. Many of you might know, be familiar with the forum website, right? The Geospatial Forum, real important group for us. The way that we invited most of you to be here is because you're involved with the forum and you signed up to be a member of the forum. If you haven't, I want to encourage you to. If you have other folks in your office that you think would benefit from this group, just come here and fill out this registration form. It's real quick, right? All we're collecting is, oh gee, I have the transcript running. Let's see, how do we change that? Sorry guys, stop transcript. Just fill out the form, it's real easy, right? Your name and your email address basically and your constituency group. This is how you also can sign up for task forces. It really is that easy, you just pick one and boom, you're on the list. So this adds you to our membership database that we maintain at OGIS on behalf of the forum, and it helps us make sure that we're able to keep in touch with you for things going on with the forum, special meetings like this. So real important, real easy to do, and it's all email based. There's no password to remember. Anytime you make a change, it will send you a notification to your email. So just a reminder on that. If you haven't signed up, please do so. Share it with other folks. Just a couple other things here. Oh, and why do we, another side benefit of that, right, is the forum is governed by the executive committee. And the executive committee is a number of volunteers, right? Here's our current folks. We're about to go into an election. All volunteers. There is an eligibility requirement to be able to sit on the executive committee. And it usually involves attending a couple of forum meetings in a given year, or active participation in a task force. And by signing up, that's really how we track your attendance at meetings. So we encourage you to do that. So not only does it make you eligible to be on the committee, but also to vote for new members when that comes around every fall, and also nominate, folks that you would like to be on the executive committee. So easy to do, but pretty important little thing, just some housekeeping wanted to remind you of. And we made it real easy to get to the meeting schedule. We generally have quarterly general meetings. If you're wondering, when's the next meeting, just hit the meeting schedule and we post all that info here, right? Here's an announcement for this meeting. And we try really hard to make the agenda available online and a registration link like we did here. And then what we started doing, as you noticed, is we started recording all the forum meetings, right? So we use Microsoft Teams, and it makes it really easy to record videos of the meetings. So we do post them up on YouTube. We do have a YouTube channel, go us. And if you missed a meeting and you want to see the video from that previous meeting, just come over here and we make an effort to post them after the meeting. Usually it's like, a day or so, a week or so after. So you can go there and check that out. Last thing I wanted to mention here about the forum webpage is the job openings page. Many of you are probably familiar with this. We make a real strong effort on our side to have current job openings that we're made aware of posted here. Of course, as a resource to job seekers, right? And we post jobs that we feel, that are in New Jersey, but also if you live in New Jersey, maybe you could commute, nearby, even if it's out of state. So a number of us are on various email listservs and just kind of have our ears out there in the community and are listening for when job openings happen. So we post them here. If you have a job opening, we would love to post it here. All you got to do is send an email to this address and give us the title, a little info, and a link to your job announcement. And that's it, and we'll post it up there for you. So that's a quick update on the forum. Couple of reminders about the Engine website, right? So we have the data catalog for data sharing for the state. So NJOGIS runs an open data site that many of you contribute to. We have, as of last night, we have 611 authoritative data sets available here from the state and from various state agencies and local government partners, most of which we have represented here. If you're not sharing data, but you have authoritative content, we would love to get it in here and add your logo to this list. So let's see, real simple. I'm gonna just search for boundaries, right? You can see, I just picked a keyword. There's content in here from counties, from DCA, you know, from our office, from DEP. By the way, all of DEP's wonderful data that's at their open data site, which is great, is also automatically linked up here. So if you're here, you'll see that as well. You can go to either or to access that content. And the Esri Open Data app just keeps improving. You know, they've got this great little data kind of viewer here now, so you can, you're not just looking at a thumbnail, you can actually interact with info, kind of look at it before you consume it or download it or, you know, stream it. So last thing on that, you know, this catalog is only a success because all of you folks are sharing data with us so that we can share it out. So what we're looking for is authoritative content. If your organization has a data set that you're the stewards of, you know, we would love to share it. We can wire up a like a map service or a feature service, or just a downloadable data file will work too. We are looking for some documentation. You know, we would love to have a full FGDC compliant metadata record. We know that's a lot of work for most of you. So we have an abridged metadata set that we call Engine Core. It's roughly 12 elements, and we did that to make it easier to complete a metadata record. We need some documentation to be able to share it properly. And Edith will go into some updates on Engine Core in a bit. And the way this works is we use ArcGIS Online as a back end here, and we have it designed so that you share your content, we wire up to it here, and then you control what's shared when you do updates. If you need to take a data set offline, you can do that. We're pointing to you live. We're not making a copy of it in a state system that then gets out of date, or you know, you have to ask us to update it or take it down for some reason. So it's really, the technology is really designed to empower you, the data steward. If you use ArcGIS Online, great, we can point to it. If you don't, no problem, we'll use ours. We just want to get your data out there and available. So that's it for my refresher. I'm going to go back to the slides and just keep rolling here and go to the next presenter, we're going to be talking about metadata with Edith Konopka. So Edith, if you're ready, I'll hit the first slide.
Okay, hopefully I'm unmuted.
Yep, I hear you.
For those of you who contribute to NJOEM or thinking about contributing, perhaps you're thinking about or actually beginning to migrate your work to ArcGIS Pro. So we thought a few highlights about the metadata editor might be in order. Using the Pro metadata editor has some advantages over the other options. There's also a few disadvantages, so I thought I'd mention a few highlights of the Pro metadata editor. It creates ArcGIS format metadata, as do ArcCatalog and the ArcGIS Online editor. The interface is like the one in ArcCatalog, but it works better. It's got one button easy production for standalone XML metadata, standalone HTML files, and for creating a template from a well-constructed existing metadata record. In ArcCatalog, you have to do that manually. Also, I should mention relatively new development is that in ArcGIS Pro Maps, if you configure your map correctly and process the layer correctly, you can publish the data and metadata to an ArcGIS Online layer seamlessly in kind of one-step operation. So that's a big advance. You don't have to futz around with trying to figure out how to get the metadata on your item. It just flows right through there, which is great. Next slide, please. So when you open Pro, if you're creating a new project, it asks you what kind of template to use. And for purposes of writing metadata, having a project based on the catalog template is useful. After you get that project started, there are some configuration steps that should be done. Next slide. One of them is to go to the project menu tab and go to options and then metadata and set the metadata style. The style that we use for Engine is FGDC CSDGM, which should be familiar, and that needs to be set here. It's not the default. Next slide, please. The second configuration you need to do is, again, in the option menu, go to geoprocessing and turn off write geoprocessing operations to dataset metadata, which is the third thing under logging. Depending on what version of the software you're running, that may be on by default. The reason to turn it off is that if you write those geoprocessing steps into a feature class metadata, it's really hard to get rid of them. So it's better not to do that unless you're sure you want them. Next slide, please. So once you've got your configuration done in the project, then the next thing to do is to do some project setup. You can add databases and folders in the catalog pane on the right-hand side, and then those connections will be available in the contents list on the left-hand side. If you choose a folder or database in contents, the available objects will be listed in the catalog view, which is in the middle. If you highlight one, its metadata will be displayed and available for editing in the metadata tab shown here. Next slide, please. When you're in the catalog view, the metadata tools should be active in the ribbon. The highlighted catalog item will be opened when you click on Edit. If you selected a spatial data item, you can first synchronize the data before editing. You can synchronize it with the data and the metadata so that characteristics from the data will be written into the metadata, and then you can start editing. After editing, you save the metadata as a standalone XML in ArcGIS format or HTML that displays nicely, similar to what you see in the Pro style sheet. You don't have to do that, but if you're keeping a repository, it's very handy. ArcGIS format metadata is what you need for ArcGIS Online, so if you ever need to overwrite the metadata that you have on an item, having that file can be handy. After editing, you can export the metadata to a standard format if you need that. If the only thing you're doing with it is keeping it with your data and publishing to ArcGIS Online, you won't need that. If the data item has old FGDC format metadata, there's also a function to upgrade it to ArcGIS format, which is what you need to work with in Esri products now. If that's something you need to do, though, it's better to do it in Arc Catalog. Next slide, please. When the Pro editor is open, the file name of metadata you are editing is shown in the active blue tab. This one happens to be a standalone XML that I was working on, but it could be a feature class or a shapefile name instead. The metadata save button in the ribbon must be used to save metadata edits. They're not saved automatically and are not saved if you just save the project. The save button does not close the editor, so you can easily save early and often, which we do recommend. When you're done editing and saving, click the little white X in the active blue tab to close the metadata editor. If you edit something incorrectly, you can also close it without saving, and your metadata will revert to what it was before you did the edit. It'll revert to what it was before you started the edit session. Next slide, please. So to help folks out, we've created a new document for Engine Core for Pro. It's very similar to the document we already have for Engine Core using the ArcGIS Online metadata editor. It has a few more details in it. It includes some pros and cons for using Pro, step-by-step setup instructions similar to what I just showed you with screenshots. And it also, like the other document, has customized help hyperlinked to each entry on the list. So each one of those little green hyperlinks goes to specific help for that particular entry. Next slide, please. So here's a comparison of the 3 editors that you could use for this purpose. The main advantages of the ArcGIS Online editor are the direct-to-cloud storage and close linking to ArcGIS Online items. It also can be convenient for quick updates or error fixes. The Pro interface, once the editor is open, is a lot like our catalog, but it works better and it has spell check. It also has the advantage that you can edit the metadata, then publish data and metadata to ArcGIS Online seamlessly, as I mentioned before. And it has one button output of standalone files. Our catalog has a metadata toolbox with some usable tools that are not available in Pro without custom programming. Most casual editors don't use those, but if you have to do some more advanced metadata manipulation without programming, they're handy. Also, our catalog displays stylized FGDC metadata, so you can see what you already have if you have old metadata. The same cannot be said for Pro. Next slide, please. Also new on our metadata support page is the electronic version of this comparison chart. And in that same document are some more details as to why you might want to choose one or the other and what is happening in each editor. The goal here being to make your documentation task as easy as possible. And we do welcome help. Email us at engine@oit.nj.gov if you need some assistance. That's it for me.
All right, thanks, Edith. I like how Pro will publish the AGO and suck the metadata along with the data set. So cool. Thanks, Edith. All right, we're just going to keep moving along. So we got Pat and Steve from Office of GIS talking about roads and addresses. Pat and Steve, I'll just go to the next slide.
Okay. So the first thing we were going to do is just show both the roads and the address points pages on our Engine website, which you can get to them from the Enterprise Data menu. So the important things to point out on the websites or web pages is, if you notice on the lower right corner, you actually can get links to actually get to either the file or shapefile downloads or also the map services. The rest of the page just gives you a little history about the road center lines. One very important thing to note on the page, the roads and address points both have been now moved to support the NENA Next Gen 911 data model. And as part of this, no longer is linear referencing available in the OGIS road center lines. You have to use the New Jersey roadway network that's maintained by the Department of Transportation for that. We will be in the future working with the DOT to actually come up with a way to do change detection and keeping both the roadway network and the NENA road center lines in sync with each other. That's going to be done somewhere in the next several years. It's part of it's dependent on the Department of Transportation redoing their entire data model that they're using for their roadway network and their whole linear referencing system. And so it's in the future. Next slide. Same thing with the address points page. To get to our various downloads, you can just go hit the links on the lower right corner of the screen. Again, the page just gives you a little history of this start point of the address points. And again, the address points also are now compliant with the NENA Next Generation 911 standards. Next slide. So just to give you some information of what we have been doing with both the roads and address points. Again, they're now in the Next Gen 911 schema. We have been working ourselves on where we've found revisions or new roads being added from the latest aerial photography that's available. We have been working on that. We also have several initiatives for adding new address points. And Steve will actually be talking about that later on in the presentation. We're still continually fixing all of the existing issues we have in both the address points and road center lines. A lot of it's due to the way the data was originally developed. So we are fixing things like street name aliases, address ranges, travel direction, postal information, and many other things like that. We have now formally adopted a monthly publication schedule for both the roads and address points. In the roads, the download, you'll get not only the road segments, but also street name alias tables. Address points also will contain street name alias tables and the landmark alias tables. They are available in both file geodatabase and shapefile format. For the address points, we did have to actually split each county into its own shapefile because of the file size restrictions for any component of a shapefile. But when you do download them, they will all be in one zip file. Next slide. One thing that's very important now and in the future, even though we have been doing work ourselves on both the address points and the road center lines, ultimately in NENA Next Gen 911 standards, the responsibility for actually maintaining roads, address points, or any other data that's part of the whole Next Gen 911 data structure is actually in the hands of the local 911 authorities. It's similar to the same setup now that the local 911 authorities are responsible for obtaining and maintaining the MSAG for their community. We have actually this year worked with several municipalities in the state who were acquiring new computer-aided dispatch systems for use in their current E911 systems. We have actually worked with them to make sure our data was in good shape for their jurisdiction and actually utilize the current Next Gen 911 data we have to actually populate their systems for them. We're also in the process of trying to work with several county GIS organizations or even directly with 911 centers to try to get any of the information that they currently have that's in their E911 system into the NENA Next Gen 911 data structure And so it would be available then for the future next gen 911 system and also for their E911 systems. Right now, as far as data exchange, an organization that does have GIS capabilities, we currently have to work with swapping file geodatabases back and forth. Our solutions team also currently is working on creating a web editor application for smaller agencies that don't have GIS. Not sure what the timing on that is, but it is in the future. Next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to turn everything over to Steve. It's all yours.
All right, thanks, Pat. So in 2020, Civil Solutions was awarded a project to create an additional 700,000 address points. And those are not currently part of the statewide address point data set. I believe Andy mentioned previously at one of the forum meetings, but this would be for addresses and information that is largely not found in the Mod 4. So as you probably know, the vast majority of the existing address points, they were initially created through parcel match to Mod 4, where you can then get the property address, convert that to a centroid, and now for the most part, those addresses have been placed over the building footprints. But for this project, the new address points will be primarily related to apartments, shopping centers, office buildings, and such. And again, these are all addresses that you typically can't find in the Mod 4 because that would only contain the master address for the overall property. And the address information being collected on this project and needed to populate the data schema are, for the most part, all being located and verified through information publicly available online. Next slide. All right, so for what you see here on the screen, this is an example of new address points for some adjacent individual apartment complexes. In the bottom example, since it was known here which units reside in which building, the address points were able to be directly placed over the building. However, in the other two examples you see here, we know the units that are found on the property, but we don't know which units belong to which building without some local ground truthing or other input, which isn't part of this project scope. But would have to be handled at a later time, hopefully with the help of the local agencies. And I also want to emphasize, not every missing address in the state is going to be collected under this project, but the expectation is that Civil Solutions will be sweeping through most of the state, with some exceptions for where data such as this would already exist. And the completion for Civil Solutions effort is for some time later in 2022. And that's all I have.
Great, thanks Steve, thanks Pat. Lots going on there with the address point project. Next up, Andy's going to give us an update about Next Gen 911.
Thanks, Brian. Good morning, everyone. Actually, before I start, let me throw in a bit of an announcement. I'm going to be retiring at the end of this calendar year, around Christmas time. I'm going to sail away. But in the meantime, I've been focusing a lot of my attention on Next Gen 911. Before the pandemic, if you were at a forum meeting in the fall, I did a full presentation about how that all works. If you missed that and you want to get details, I believe we have the recording of that out on YouTube. So I'm going to give a very quick summary of some of the important points of that here. Current 911 system is based on technology that was put in place in the 80s, and there are about 200 call centers. They're called public safety answering points, PSAPs. 200 call centers in New Jersey that handle those 911 calls, and so which center answers when you dial depends on this routing decision that currently is based primarily on the Master Street Address Guide, which is address ranges and customer records from the phone company. Doesn't do cell phones terribly well. It does it, but not terribly well. So one of the things in NextGen is to fix that. The other big important part of NextGen 911 is that it's a private IP network that connects all of the call centers together. Currently, each call center is just plugged into the public telephone network. There's no private communication between them. So the infrastructure for that is called the ESINet, Emergency Services Network. And that has to be built. That doesn't exist yet. And so there has been an RFP in the works for that, literally for years, and we're crawling its way through getting some data. The RFP has been crawling its way through the bureaucracy. It finally get released actually right before the pandemic hit. Bids were opened this fall, and they're under review now. So I'm on the review committee for that. And the first rule of RFP Club is talk about RFP Club. So I won't get into the details of that, but again, that contract will be to create the network that supports NextGen 911 and then to operate it on an ongoing basis. And what that includes is operating the actual network and then also what are known as NextGen Core Services, which among other things controls the routing of a call, the delivery to the correct PSAP when somebody calls or otherwise contacts 911, because you can do it through text messages and other ways as well. So that's all happening. The review committee is expected to finish in the next month or so. Not coincidentally, that's before I leave. That was part of what controlled my decision to retire when. And then it goes into back into the bureaucracy again. Hopefully this time it won't get stuck there. I don't think it will. So we're expecting that they will be awarding the actual contract early next year. And then, it takes a while for the contractor to sort of get up and off the ground. And then the first thing they have to do is build a fiber network. So there's some time that's going to go by before anything is operational. And then the process of bringing the PSAPs onto that network is something that with that many PSAPs, you don't do it all at once. So it's a staged implementation. And how it's going to get staged is up to the plan that the contractor presents. So that we don't know yet, whether it'll be how many at a time or, how they're going to pick who goes first and stuff is all to be determined and to some extent negotiated. So it's a gradual thing, but, when the first one gets lit up, that system is, in use. And so that's in some senses a target for when the prep work has to be done. Pat mentioned in the roads and address work, that has been where we've been focusing most of our effort, because that was where we were the furthest away from being ready. The jurisdictional boundaries of the PSAPs is essentially in place already. A little bit of tweaking on that. And that, of course, is a really important layer when you're routing the call. You have to know what polygon to drop the location into to figure out who to route to. And that is literally how NextGen works. It's actually using GIS for real on the fly for that. The other piece of that data that doesn't yet really exist is that within those jurisdictions, there are response zones for police, fire, and medical, which don't necessarily correspond with the jurisdiction of the call center. Those we don't have. And although you can deliver the call to the PSAP without that, it's a pretty important layer to have for the next step in the process, which is dispatching the responders, right? So that's something we're going to have to work on, and even more so than the addresses, we cannot do that without local help. So we're going to have to be, outreaching to the individual 911 agencies for that. And that local participation is going to get to be more and more important. Pat mentioned that responsibility is officially a local thing once NextGen 911 goes live. We're not going to disappear from the picture. We're going to still be involved, but we're going to be sort of handing over the primary responsibility to the locals and then taking on more of a support role. So one of the things is, the sooner we get that started, the better. As Pat mentioned, we've been working with some already. If any of you encounter any 911 people that are, ready to tackle this now, most of the ones that have come to us have come because, they bought a new dispatch software, and then, at the 11th hour, they realized that one of the things they needed was GIS data to do addresses. And so they come to us typically fairly frantic because, we're deploying our system next month and we don't have any data. So we jump in and give them what we have. So that data is ready now for them to use now, and to sort of get started into the process of keeping it up to date, which they will need to do for NextGen. So certainly anybody that in the 911 world, encourage them to get in touch with us now to do that. Sooner or later, they're gonna need to learn how to do that. And the other thing that's going to happen is that they're going to be coming to all of you for help, right? Because typically, to get to 200 PSAPs, what we're talking about is, in some cases, especially in a couple of counties, you probably know who you are. Municipal police are the primary call center for 911 in a lot of places. And, how many municipal police have a GIS specialist? So you are likely to be hearing from them about that as well. But, know that we're there to support the whole thing, and the sooner the quicker as far as getting people involved in that. I think that's the story for 911.
All right, great. Thanks, Andy. Lots going on there. We're going to keep rolling with our next topic is our new geocode service. So Steph from Office of GIS is going to give us an update on the new geocoder.
Brian, I think Brendan has a question.
One quick comment. I developed our Spillman computer-aided dispatch for Toms River Township, and in doing so, one of the things we had issues with was what you touched topic on with regards to apartment complexes. And while using the roads will be definitely an advantage to get you sort of in the area, the problem we had was when you get to a complex, there's 20 different units. Where do we go from there? So we actually used the polygon file, and we dropped points on the assets and created like apartments file for various apartment complexes for things like the Ocean County Mall, so people know exactly where they have to go. Is there a talk to develop more than just the roads to get more accuracy, like a polygon file or some kind of composite locator where you can start pulling in more information? Our current locator is not just roads. It's built off of commonplaces, parcels, blocks, these apartments that I speak of. And is that like the plan moving forward, or is this just the focus just going to be the road?
So the way that the NextGen data model is structured, there aren't polygons for units, residential units, or anything like that. Those are address points with a subaddress on them. So there's a point location rather than a polygon. But yeah, the goal is, and the structure supports, you know, an individual point location for really whatever is deemed to be necessary to deliver the service appropriately. So if it's an apartment, you can have an address point for that. If it's a baseball field, you can have a point for that. And the data structure supports the information that would be needed for any of those scenarios. You know, if you imagine some of the bigger, you know, recreational parks, there might be, you know, 20 soccer fields in one park,
Exactly.
right? And you can, if you have ways to designate which field is which, you can have a point on every one. That's all supported. It's all built into the data model. And it's really just a matter of what it takes to get the data populated into it. And we would love to work with you. I don't know if we have your point data in our data set, but we should. So we'll talk to you offline about, you know, getting that merged in.
Sounds good. Yeah, we have a complete point set of like all the common places, businesses, as well as their alternate names, you know, that all are in the composite, because certain
Right.
businesses change names and are known as two different things, three different things. So it's pretty comprehensive, but it's a similar thing with having those points for the apartments to be able to get the individual should the need arise. Toms River Township, we do get a lot of calls in apartment complexes, and usually they're, you know, serious calls.
Right.
So we want to be able to get the officer to the, not only to the complex, but to the exact unit where they need to go.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Doing so, we created an apartment point file that's part of the composite locator.
Okay.
Andy, if I could throw something in too.
Yep.
Also in the NINA model for address points, roads, there is an attribute. There's two attribute fields. One is in unincorporated community, and the other is neighborhood community. And you know, the whole purpose of those also is, and they do actually come with polygon data sets also that can be established, but that actually would help with some of the things you're talking about, like shopping centers, you know, actual complexes. They could all be neighborhoods also.
Right. Yeah, so the apartment complex can be a neighborhood, and then each apartment is a point.
Mhm.
Yep.
So,
And yeah, and the other thing you mentioned, you know, business names and so forth those are in the 911 data model as well. They're called landmark names, and there's a whole data structure to support them as well. So, you know, the McDonald's on Cass Street can be in the database as McDonald's Cass Street without it. You know, it's tied to an address, but you can find it by just looking for McDonald's.
Another great thing we incorporated in is just intersections. So when the dispatcher does a search, they could do a search for, you know, Hooper Avenue and Route 37.
yeah, the NINA structure doesn't actually have intersections. But correct me if I'm wrong, if I remember correctly, our geocoder does handle intersections, correct, Andy?
Yeah.
Correct. It does.
So that's just based off the road network. It figures out where one road crosses the other. Yeah. Yep. So it's all pretty well covered in the data model. It's just a matter of getting it in there. And you know, with what Steve was showing, where we have, you know, just sort of a pile of points for sub addresses, that's just the starting point. And then the ultimate idea is to, where possible, put those points on the building, not just on the right building, but in the right part of the building, so that they can be used by the responder to know, you know, where the unit is that they're headed for. And it ties in. There's also a system that's not part of this that has floor plans, you know, as images that some of the responders can have access to on a mobile device, which is another helpful little twist.
So Brandon, if you want to send an email to me, we could start arranging some meetings to trying to see what we can do to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we ran into, or we're running to as an issue, is we're really starting to post a lot more to the cloud and using ArcGIS online services. However, you can't post a composite locator to the cloud at this time with ArcGIS or ESRI software, which is a limiting factor. I'm hoping that ESRI, I see Justin's here today. Maybe Justin will have the poll with the developers, but it would be really cool to be able to host that information in the cloud and be able to tap that outside of our building or outside of our dispatch offices.
That is a great segue, Brendan, to our next topic.
Oh, really? Good deal.
It's a great discussion. Do want to keep things moving. If there's more around Next Gen 911, maybe we could do that at the end or offline. Great discussion though, something that's going to impact all of us. I'm just going to keep moving here. So next up is our an update on the new geocode service at the state. It was mentioned, we talked a lot about address points on buildings, that example Steve showed us. Those address points, as Steph will show us, do help power this new geocode service. So after Steph's presentation, we'll take a short 5-minute break in the presentations, okay? A little bio break. So Steph, I'm gonna go to the next slide.
Okay, hi everyone, Stephanie Bossitz from Office of GIS. First, I'd like to say thank you to everyone that was a beta tester during the development of this. It was very helpful feedback I got from everyone. So a couple reasons we needed to upgrade our old service, the NJ Cascade service, is that maintenance was becoming an issue. As you all know, we upgraded our database schema to the Next Gen 911 format, and the old locator was based on the old schema, so we couldn't keep going back and forth. There was a lot of custom code and custom style sheets used, and it was comprised of a bunch of different locators. You can see there on the right. So maintaining those was a pain, and it was created in ArcMap, so it wasn't going to be sustainable moving forward. So we are still supporting the service until the end of the calendar year, but we are no longer updating the data. Next slide. So why should you switch to the new service? We are currently updating it monthly. So you can actually benefit from some of those maybe multi-unit building points that are being added in that Steve talked about. It's also based on the Next Gen 911 format. So a big part of that was relocating the address points from along road center lines to on top of the building footprints. So you'll be able to get a more accurate result. We've leveraged a lot of new technologies from ArcGIS Pro and Server. So the service is now created using a multi-role locator. So all of those advanced search options like subaddress, intersection, everything you're used to in the old service is now all created from one locator. So there's also going to be a reduction in redundant results. You'll see that's due to deduplication process that Esri does on the back end from your input data. So that is a performance enhancement. And then there's also room for future expansion, like what we were just talking about, you know, place names down the line, maybe a parcel search too. It can all be rolled into this one locator rather than maintaining a bunch of cascading locators. And we also now have the suggest capability, which will be, you know, it's easy to integrate into your ArcGIS Online applications. And the only caveat with that is the suggest is not compatible in ArcMap. So you can still use the service in ArcMap, but if you're typing, you're not going to see any suggestions popping up for your search. Next slide. Okay, so making the switch, I just want to caution everyone that a lot has changed. So even your batch geocoding, you can see here, like your input fields are different, your output fields are different. Same goes for the REST endpoint. If you're making a request, you're going to have to format it differently. You're going to have to handle the response differently. So I just want everyone to, you know, pay close attention when you're making the switch. Next slide. Some important things I wanted to talk about on what you'll see from your output on a batch geocode process. So here you can see like a sample output table. You have some of the user inputs there to the left, the address and city that the user input. You have the match address. And then you have a number of output fields over here. You have the city output field, and that's coming from our primary postal community name field in our data model. So that's kind of the best thing that we have. And that's what's also populated in the matched address. But we also, if you had searched on another acceptable postal community name, that's also going to be output into what Esri calls the neighborhood field there. So you can see in that first row, the user had actually searched on Hamilton, which is an acceptable name. So that's what was output in the neighborhood field. And we may have multiple options there, but whatever you search is what will be output. And then there's a zone field that always includes the incorporated municipality that we have from our data set. So with that background, when you're using the suggest, what you're going to see as a suggestion is populated from that city field. So it's our primary postal community name. So if you are pretty sure you have an acceptable postal name, just keep typing. You will still, once you hit enter, all of the fields will be searched. You'll get a result, but just want to make you aware that what you'll see suggested is only pulling from that one city field. That's just a decision we had to make for performance reasons when we were developing this. Next slide. Oh, no, there we go. And of course, anything you need to know, you can find out on our engine page. We do still have a downloadable version available. But the only thing is you cannot use that version in ArcMap. It's not compatible. So if people still feel inclined to do batch processing in ArcMap, we have lifted, we used to have 1,000 record limit on a batch process. We have lifted that limit, but we just ask you to use your discretion and not overload our servers. If you're going to be doing hundreds of thousands of records, please just download it and use Pro. We have some help documentation to help you make that switch. The help doc covers using it in Pro, adding the service to your ArcGIS Online organization, and some REST formatting stuff. So please take a look at that before you make the switch. So feel free to contact me. I know this is a big change, so any questions or comments or feedback, please contact me.
Great, thanks, Steph. And just a reminder, the old geocoder we call NJ Cascade is going away at the end of the calendar year. So if you're using that, time to start thinking about transitioning. Okay, thank you, Steph. Let's take a 5-minute bio break, and then we'll come back and we'll pick up with an update on the 2020 imagery by Andy and myself, and just keep rolling. We're a little bit behind on schedule, but not terribly. So I've got 10:12, so 5 minutes from now is like, let's say 10:18 or so. Good time to get coffee. All right, folks, about another minute, we'll get back to our presentations. All right, by my crude timekeeping, it's been about 5 minutes. Hopefully you had a chance to stretch or take a bio break or get some coffee, whatever. So let's just keep rolling. So next up, we're going to talk about imagery, primarily the 2020 imagery. Most of you are familiar with this, but we just want to touch on it briefly. Andy's going to start.
Okay, yep. So as you probably have heard, the 2020 project came to completion. This is always a partnership effort, very much a partnership effort, not something that we would be able to pull off on our own. We had a huge amount of help from DEP through a quirk in the way appropriations law is. You know, once something is in the appropriations law, it tends to stay there forever, and getting something added is hard. So DEP has for years had the ability to enter into contracts with USGS to do things that OIT doesn't have. So they were able to do all the contract administration on the project, which was a huge help to us. We also had, in terms of funding, DEP funded just about half the project, and then we also had support from New Jersey Transit, OIT, Homeland Security and Preparedness, DOT, and Military and Veteran Affairs all contributed. So that enables us to take that imagery and put it out in the public domain. All the rest of you are able to use it without charge, and you know, that's a goal that we've been trying to stick to over the years, and we've been able to so far. So we're very appreciative for all the partnership on that. The product you're probably familiar with, it's a 1-foot 4-band image. Brian's going to go into all the various ways that we have it available for use. You can download, you can stream, a couple of different options there. So Brian, why don't you go ahead?
Sure, thanks, Andy. So yeah, so we worked really hard once the 2020 imagery was delivered to get it available to you folks. We know there's pent-up demand because this only happens to date, you know, every several years or so. So just wanted to review the options if you're not using this imagery already. On the Engine imagery page, we've got a lot of ways to access this great 2020 imagery, right? So there's an intro with some technical details. And these are all the years that are available online for streaming as a service in WMS format from our servers. So let's just talk about the 2020s. Like Andy said, we've got the 4-band, so we've got it broken up by natural color and infrared. These are in a web map service format, which is pretty standard. Pretty much any app can consume that. If you click on the link, it'll take you to the item in our AGO catalog. Tells you all about it, right? You can access the full metadata record here if you like. Here's all the good detail. And then to actually get to it, right, you could open it in an AGO viewer if you wanted to look at it right now, just like that. You could open it in, if you're using an Imagery desktop, you can just click one of these links and it will open up ArcMap or Pro and just stream the imagery right into it. I think I have Pro already. You know, it just opens a blank map and adds it in, and then you can interact with it. So nice and easy that way. And then if you're building an app or something and you want the direct URL to that service, it is available at the bottom of the item page here. So this URL, you can just copy and paste that into your web app that you're building or what have you. So lots of ways to use it interactively, to use it as a service. We also made it available for download, right? For lots of reasons, you might want a local copy for redundancy, or maybe you're doing some hardcore analysis and you need the actual image files. Here on the imagery page, bunch of options for that, right? So let's go over those quickly. You might have seen us present these before. For the 2020s, we do have an interactive map we call the Imagery Warehouse, which will let you look at a map in New Jersey and select individual tiles to download them. So if you only need a few, you can do that with this tool. It's really great for that. That's what it's really built for. You can use it to get, several tiles, hundreds of tiles, thousands of tiles if you want. We have some additional instructions here on how to select multiple tiles and use a third-party download utility called UGET to, select hundreds, thousands of tiles and offload that to UGET to just automate the downloading of that for you. Couple other things here. We also, this is based on a grid, right? The tile grid with URLs to each individual tile to download from our cloud storage, which is S3 in Amazon's Web Services through their open data program. We actually make those tile grids available as a feature service in open data. So if you wanted to pull the grid into, say, a GIS desktop app and kind of do it yourself and not use this web app, follow these links. There's the 07 grid that has all these years in it, including the 2020s and the older 1930s grid. So let's say you want all of the imagery, right? There's no hard drive delivery anymore. That went away. But you can bulk download the whole thing from AWS. And we have instructions to do that here. You have to pick your flavor. The 2020 is available in a couple different Mr. Sid flavors and also as cloud optimized GeoTIFFs or COGS. And you'll need to get the free command line interface from AWS. It's the only way to access them. There's no GUI. And install it and then just use these instructions. Right, it's pretty simple. You might have seen me use these before in a demo, but once you install it, we give you these commands so that you can just paste it right into a command prompt on your machine, and you don't have to worry about syntax, and it will start going. So this is simulating a download of all the Mr. Sid and the GeoTIFFs from AWS. Now it's a simulation, that's why it's going so fast. It would take you longer to do all that. But we're talking 9,200 plus tiles for each format. So there's a lot of data there. But the good news is with this kind of approach, you fire off the command and you let it run. You let it run overnight and check it in the morning. It's that kind of operation. So that's about it on the imagery page. Lots of options for you to get at the 2020 imagery, and don't forget our additional imagery catalog here of all these other years that the state has access to are streaming for your use. So that's our imagery update. And why don't we just keep moving? Next, we're going to talk about elevation products. So Doug and Derek from our office are going to start us off there. I'm going to go to the first slide.
Okay, hi. Can everybody hear me? This is Doug Schleifer.
We hear you.
Okay, great. So we've been working with the DEP Bureau of GIS on this. They're doing all the data development work on the elevation data, and we're doing the work to create map services and download services through Engine on that. Current activities right now, BGIS is reprocessing the 2014 Northeast New Jersey post-Sandy and 2015 DVRPC LiDAR collections into the state ortho tiling scheme to match the 2018 Northwest New Jersey and 2019 South New Jersey collections. BGIS is considering whether to also reprocess the 2013-2014 NOAA Coastal Topobathy LiDAR collection into the state ortho tiling scheme. It's not needed for the statewide DEM and is the oldest of the QL2 collections. However, having the collection in the common tiling scheme would make it easier to include it in any publicly accessible data download utilities OGIS provides. BGIS will focus on processing the Northeast and DVRPC collections first, and will revisit the issue of retiling older legacy collections after the work of the two primary collections can be evaluated. BGIS recently updated the statewide 10-foot digital elevation model, or DEM, with data from the Northwest and South New Jersey collections, and derived a statewide 10-foot hillshade from the DEM. They delivered these data sets to OGIS, where they were recently posted for download just this week. The DEM image service was also updated, and a new hillshade raster tile service is now also available. BGIS is presently working with a contractor to evaluate a process to generate cartographic quality 2-foot contours from the Northwest collection. The process is being applied to pilot areas within the collection extent. Draft contours are being currently reviewed. The decision to generate contours for other areas will depend on several factors, including the success of the process, the level of effort needed to process other areas, cost, and interest and support from other groups within DEP. I should just let you know before I go on that my lawn service just showed up. And so you might hear that in the background, even though I have all the windows closed. So next steps, BGIS will finish reprocessing the Northeast and DVRPC LiDAR collections into the state ortho tiling scheme. OGIS will assist BGIS with review of the reprocessed tiles. An interactive map-based web application on Engine will enable tile-by-tile downloads of the LiDAR collections. Complete tile packages for each collection area will also be downloadable from Engine via AWS command line. BGIS will create 2-foot DEMs from the Northeast and DVRPC LiDAR collections and combine them with the existing Northwest and South New Jersey 2-foot DEMs to create a seamless statewide 2-foot DEM. It is likely, although still under discussion, that BGIS will derive 2-foot slope, aspect, and hillshade rasters from the statewide DEM. An interactive map-based web application on Engine will enable tile-by-tile downloads for all the rasters. Statewide tile packages will also be downloadable from Engine via AWS command line for that too. OGIS will performance test the statewide 2-foot DEM in an image service. If it performs satisfactorily and data storage requirements are adequate, OGIS will provide it as a public-facing service. OGIS will also consider developing a public-facing 2-foot hillshade raster tile service. Image services for slope and aspect are not being considered at this time. If issues arise with downloads or services of the 2-foot rasters, 10-foot rasters will be used instead. BGIS will then need to create 10-foot rasters for slope and aspect. BGIS has plans to generate several inundation rasters using the 10-foot DEM and NOAA tidal datum reference layers to help evaluate sea level rise impacts for use in developing resiliency plans. These rasters will show the extent of tidal inundation with several sea level rise amounts added to the base water levels and the depths of inundation throughout the inundation extents. As these rasters may have utility for other interested parties, OGIS and BGIS will investigate posting these layers through OGIS download utilities on Engine. There's no specific timeline for the data and services to be finalized and made publicly available for any of these products. Next slide, please. Further down the road, BGIS is considering submission of a proposal for the USGS 3D elevation program, or 3DEP, for their FY22 broad area announcement to recollect the 6 counties in Northeast NJ. The Northeast collection will be 8 years old in 2022, which is the target age set by 3DEP to update LiDAR data. The major issue will be to determine if there is sufficient interest among state agencies to fund a recollection of the area, and if it should be at a higher quality level. Higher quality levels support better feature generation, including development of building footprints, but require significant additional funding as costs per square mile are greatly increased. BGIS recently submitted requests to 3DEP for cost estimates for QL2 and QL1 collections of the 6-county Northeast New Jersey area that would be used for the proposal. The estimates are as follows. For QL2, it's $284 per square mile. That comes to $400,800 and change, plus independent QAQC for a total of $448,000. And that's just for that 6-county collection in the northwest, sorry. And then for QL2, it's $390 per square mile, which is $550,000, plus QAQC, which is $57,000 for a total of $607,000. These do not include a 6% assessment fee by 3DEP, and those are based on the amount of partner funding. These estimates are based upon a spring 2022 tide coordinated collection. Also, USGS will only cost share the QL2 costs. Partners are responsible for the difference between QL1 and QL2 costs. So that's it for the plan going forward for data and services. Are there any questions? No? Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Doug. I think Derek's going to give us a quick overview of the elevation resources available on the Engine website.
Yeah, I was going to share my screen. Let's see if that works here. Everybody see my screen? It's the Engine site.
Yes.
That visible? Okay. I just want to show you, Doug just talked about the elevation data, and the future we'll talk about what we have on our Engine site to get to that elevation data. To get to the elevation data, there are 3 ways you can get to it from this main page. One is this link right off to the side. If you click that, it brings up the elevation page. Also, this main carousel that's kind of rotating through these images. One of them, the second one, no, the third one, takes you to elevation, say learn more there. Or you go up to our enterprise data and you can click on elevation there. And all of those bring you up to this elevation page, which looks very similar to our imagery page, has the same expandos and the main tabs at the top. It starts off with your QL2 data here. And here's that new statewide DEM that Doug talked about. This is the most recent one. And if you click on this or the little plus button over here, it expands it out. And you can see that we have those same similar style to what the imagery pointed out. And this one has the DEM and hillshade right here. If you click on this, it loads up the item in our AGO, and you can do the same things. Open it up in Map Viewer Classic, or you can open up in the new Map Viewer. You can do your desktop or pro options, or you have your option down here for the URL. go back to the elevation page, and you see we have the same for Hillshade. We also have downloads through the command line interface, like Brian had shown you. We have all the syntax worked out for you here. So you have access to many ways of getting these different data sources. So we have here statewide, here are the other QL2 projects, the South NJ, and also the same types of information there. This one has a separate app that also works. If you click on that, you can bring up the web application that allows you to pick and choose which tiles that you want to do. And there's instructions on how to use that, and we have everything in there. The same is true for, if we scroll down here, for the Southwest NJ, there's a separate app for that one that does that, which has you download by tile functionality. If you want to download bulk download, we also have the AWS command line interface option for that as well. So I'm going to minimize these and show that there are a few other QL2 projects here that are older, and the thumbnails show the range of those, the coverage of those projects. In the future, we plan on having an interactive web map for all the QL2 LiDAR collections. For right now, for these, each individual one, you can click on and go to the open data item for the grid. And if you click on that, you can see here's the grid for that. And if you click on these, there's a download link, and you can click on that. And that goes straight to our to the AWS and downloads the file. Let's see, so now on to the legacy items. Up here, we also have legacy LiDAR collections. We were on the QL2, click on that. It takes us over to this other tab with a lot of legacy collections here. We also have the statewide DEM from 2016 here. Same as the other ones, we have the streaming service. We also have the availability to download via AWS command line interface. And you can see similarly, there's many more legacy projects going back in time. Same little thumbnails showing you the examples. Right now, there's also, let me get you right here. If you go to I forget where it is, but if you go, we have also all of our LiDAR and DEM data sets for New Jersey deprecated version on our open data, and that shows the geography and coverage of all the different projects that have happened. So you can look at it that way. And that is it.
Great. Thanks, Dirk, for going through that.
Yeah.
We did have a question about elevation. Chris McLean in the chat said you had a question. You want to do that now?
Or was he just saying that he could hear you?
Oh,
Not
no
sure.
question.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. All right, you're off the hook, Chris. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get back to administrative boundaries. So if you're following along on the agenda or worried about time, we are running behind at least 15 minutes, but we're just going to keep rolling with it. So next up, administrative boundaries update, the dynamic duo again of Pat and Steve. So I'm going to go to the next slide.
Okay, hello again, everybody. So yeah, just really quick, we wanted to show again under the enterprise data on the engine website, we do have a page for the administrative boundary information. It doesn't, actual information, it doesn't give you too much at this time, but if you look at the lower right hand corner, you see the links where you can actually download and access all our different formats of our boundaries. Next slide. What I'm going to talk about is in the last couple of years, we actually did work with both New York State and Pennsylvania to finally come up with coincident boundaries between our states. So for New York, we were working with the New York State GIS Program Office, and for Pennsylvania, we were working with PennDOT. The project with New York was actually very easy and simple. Along the northern land boundary between the Delaware River and the Hudson River, the New Jersey Geological Survey actually several years ago sent crews out, and they were able to field locate the vast majority of the boundary monuments, and they performed the boundary or a GPS survey, and we actually have points from them of that GPS survey. In the New York City waterways, as far as Hudson River, New York Harbor, Arthur Hill, and the Raritan Bay, there is a book called The Story of New Jersey Civil Boundaries by John Snyder, who has detailed information, including they list the lat and long of every turning point in those waterways. And the Geological Survey had also mapped those. So that's what our boundary between New York State has been based on. So when we worked with New York State, it was actually a very simple process. We sent what we had to them, and they were like, "Oh, we love this." The only thing that we did have to make an adjustment to was the location in the Delaware River where the tri-state boundary corner was located, so that it would align with what they had previously worked on between Pennsylvania and New York State. Next slide. Now, unfortunately, the boundary with Pennsylvania, because it's in the Delaware River, is much more complicated. There was boundary agreements ratified by both states back in the 18th century. Those agreements were based on reports that were generated by two different bi-state commissions. Fortunately, the details of those reports are also in the same civil boundaries book. So in the area below the Trenton Falls, which is roughly in the area of the Trenton Makes Bridge or the railroad bridge, the river is tidal waters. So the state boundary line in that area follows what's called the Thowag, or easier definition, it's the middle of the primary navigation channel. So then every island that exists in the river was assigned to either New York or New Jersey or Pennsylvania by the first bi-state commission. Now, obviously, we have no way of really knowing where the actual primary navigation channel limits are. But what we did do is based on where the islands were annexed, we were able to establish a line in the middle of the river in that area. One of the problems we ran into in this area was a lot of the islands no longer exist. They've actually been landfilled or removed during dredging projects. But we were able to find enough information to find out where those islands were located. Then even more complex is the area above the Trenton Falls. There's massive, many islands. And unfortunately, some of them no longer exist. Most of them are no longer known by the name they were back in the 18th century. Next slide. So in order to first even determine what islands we could identify in current aerial photography were the islands detailed in the book, we had to do a lot of research looking for historical maps or any other books or texts that could help us. And during the project, we found out the New Jersey State Archives had a copy of a map that was actually prepared by a land surveyor back in the 18th century that also was part of the agreements that were ratified by both states. We were all excited until we got to the state archives and found out that before the map was ever preserved, where it was located was flooded and the map was in horrible condition. Didn't help us much. Pennsylvania did have also, the PennDOT was able to find a version in their archives. It was in better condition, but it didn't have all the pages to it. But so after all this work, eventually we were able to first get PennDOT to agree with us which islands were which and what state they belonged to. And then we did use several processes to try to actually come up with an accurate delineation of where the line would be based on all the islands. We tried several methods. In the end, we actually ended up using cross-section, snapping to the center of the cross-section lines, and then using generate curves tools to actually like smooth everything out and make it like a reasonable looking boundary line. Long story short, ultimately between our office and PennDOT, we were able to finally come up with a line that we all agreed on. It's also going to be submitted to the Census Bureau in January as part of a report that we're going to be doing to the U.S. Census Bureau Boundary and Annexation Survey. So ultimately, the U.S. Census Bureau is also going to be adopting this line. Next slide. And real quick, I just wanted to show a couple of the maps that we were able to find from back in the 18th century that we were able to work with. This is just one of the Bulls Island area up above Lambertville. Next slide. And this is actually a copy of a portion of the map that actually was formally adopted by both states. This is in the area of the Scudder's Falls Bridge. And next slide. And now I'm going to turn things over to Steve again. It's all yours.
All right, thanks, Pat. All right, so I'm sure everyone in this call is familiar with and utilize the county municipal layers at some point. These layers were first made available more than a decade ago, and they replaced the boundaries digitized from the USGS topo maps. If anybody remembers those and the limitations that came along with that data set. And aside from annexations and new digital tax maps, everything has largely stayed the same, which is what you would expect. But there are some boundaries that do change along with natural processes, and we see that with some of the stream center lines and along the coastlines. Next slide. All right, so here's one example where that might be the case. The image on the left is from 2002, which is what the DEP data was created for the project and used in the original Municipal Boundaries project. Then on the right is the 2020 ortho, and I've highlighted a few of the line segments here to point out where the boundaries may need to be updated. So therefore, in the 2022-2023 timeframe, the plan is to review the latest land use land cover and stream centerline data from DEP at that time, and then compare that against the municipal boundary lines that were originally sourced from those data sets that are now more than 20 years old. And once identified, if necessary, the updated line segments from the DEP data sets will be replacing the municipal boundary lines data set. Then from there, we would generate municipal polygons, recalculate some of the attributes, dissolve for the counties, and so forth. But again, not expected to begin for another year, and we'll probably start with an internal pilot project. And we're also expecting there would probably be a lengthy transition period before any updated boundaries replace what is in use today. Next slide. And then separately from this project, beginning of January next year, OGIS will be submitting any state, county, or municipal boundary updates to the Census Bureau on an annual basis under the Boundary and Annexation Survey Program. These would be mostly for annexations, but could include any changes. For annexations, we would also need to submit a copy of the municipal ordinance or any other legal documentation supporting that boundary change. And then tax maps could also be used as documentation in cases where a correction or an update needed to be made. And by participating in this program, this helps ensure that the Census Bureau and state share the same boundary delineations where possible, since we all know how important that can be. And that's all I have.
Great. Thanks, Steve and Pat. We'll just keep rolling here. Statewide parcels and Mod 4 data. Steve again. So Steve, here we go.
Yep, right back to me.
Yep.
All right, a little tight in time, so I'm gonna just jump right into it. Let me just quickly show you where you can find parcels in Mod 4 on the NJDEP page. The first drop down under Enterprise Data tab, right at the top is parcels. And we have a couple paragraphs here of history, maintenance, along with some key details. Then underneath or alongside, depending on how wide you have your browser open, there's some direct links for downloading, viewing metadata, or opening ArcGIS online. We also have a link to hosted feature services, or you may want to view cache raster tiles, where the symbology and labeling is already in place for you, with the option there to open in ArcMapper Pro. And it's cut off in the screenshot, but there's also a link to the download by county if you're not interested in the parcels or the Mod 4 for the rest of the state. So a lot of information and links here. When you have time, check it out. Next slide. All right, so here's a quick visual of recent activity on a county level for the statewide parcel composite. I don't have a legend on here. I'm just going to explain what the colors indicate. In green, we have Bergen, Passaic, and Sussex. And these are all counties where the parcel updates have recently been incorporated, and those counties should be available for download in the next month or so. Blue shading is Union and Warren. These are currently in process, and we'll probably have those available late this year, early next year. And then for the counties highlighted in yellow, Morris, Burlington, Cape May. This is where we've been in contact with the local data stewards and are in the planning stages to begin incorporating the updates there. The rest of the counties are various vintage, but we hope to get everyone that has data updated over the next year or so. And if we haven't reached out to you yet, but you want to get your parcels available on NGen, contact us and we'll work on getting you into the queue for that. So once you're ready to send us your parcel data, we'll provide you a link to update the data to our share drive. We do ask that it's the full parcel composite and not just the updates. Also, if you have a copy or link to the most current tax maps, if you have them available, that would be a great help. And if there are any annexations that you're aware of, as mentioned before, please let us know about those also. So we do have a couple different rounds of processing that we go through. The initial checks, they'll just be to make sure we have the required attributes are in place and fully populated. Then we'll run through some out-of-the-box topology checks just to make sure there's no major issues. We also have some custom models and scripts to run through as a QC check. And then after that, we'll go through a visual review of the edge matching for parcel lines that run across municipalities. And we've also now incorporated some third-party software called OneIntegrate. And that lets us create some additional validation and rules that we can apply on both the spatial and attribute side. And we are hoping to get to the point for parcels where we can just isolate and review only the parcels that have changed in some way since your last submission. Then once we're finished with our review, we'll provide you with a separate layer that contains any spatial or attribute changes that have been made. If it fits in your workflow, you might be able to directly replace some of your data. If you're not comfortable with that, we also detail the type of change that was made, along with some notes for what was done. And then you can decide on a case-by-case basis if you want to incorporate that back into your data set. What we like to do is provide the updated data along with an email summary of what we found, and then try to schedule a meeting in case there's any questions you have or if you wanted some further explanation on some things. For instance, we recently ran through this process with Bergen County. There was about 3,000 parcels in the review feature class, which is a lot. But just a third of them were flagged for something as simple as an extra space at the end of the Q code value, which affects the PAMS pin, which can also affect joins, but it's a simple fix. So don't solely focus on the number of changes and get discouraged because they can add up pretty quickly, even for minor things. All right, next slide. And then on the Mod 4 side of things, we only work with the year-end data. That's usually not available to us until well into the next year. Our latest update was over the summer, but that was for 2019 Mod 4, and that was delayed all of last year because of COVID. The 2020 Mod 4 was released a few months ago, and that should be available sometime before December 10th. And why December 10th? That's because that's the date that Daniel's Law goes into effect. So in response to that, we're now required to redact certain owner names from public record. For this year, taxation didn't have the ability to redact those records from the Mod 4. Therefore, all the information that we publish, the owner field will be null, and that's going to be for every record in the state. However, the owner field name itself is still going to be present, and the data schema will remain the same. And that's because once taxation has the means in place to redact only the specific records, we expect that field will be populated again for the rest of the records as before. And that's all I have if anybody has any questions.
Any questions?
All right.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. We'll just move to our next topic, which is base maps. So Doug is back to give us an update on work at OGIS and our various base maps.
Thank you, Brian. So this is our base maps page on Engine under the Enterprise Data tab. And you can see that we publish sort of a diversity of base maps. Basically, you know, like the color base map is somewhat like Google Maps. And the light gray base map is like the color base map, but it provides muted grayscale symbology to more readily distinguish overlain features. So you can use that in an application where you want the overlain features to really stand out. Color-based map is more like, provides vivid color symbology to readily distinguish base map features. You might use that on its own. You could also overlay it with other data. The light gray base map might be better for that. The services provide pre-rendered symbology that incorporates basic map features to provide a background in which those other data layers can be overlaying the base map features, render in greater detail at larger scales. And these services are available as ArcGIS REST and WMTS services. Then we also have a parcels base map, and that incorporates block and lot boundary features. It is formatted to resemble a tax map with block and lot number labels and road labels. And this service is available as ArcGIS REST and WMTS services. Historical base map is a mosaic of circa 1900 USGS topographic maps to provide core map features in a historical context. And this service is available as WMS. The USGS topographic maps are mosaics of a later series of USGS topographic maps. These services are available as WMS. And you can see above the listing of the base maps that there are technical instructions provided for using the base maps in ArcMap, ArcGIS Pro, and AGO. Okay, next. So focusing on the color base map, we are in the midst of doing an update for that. You can see the map on top is the current version of that, and that has core features listed there on the slide. And we are adding a whole bunch of features to it in the second list. And you can see that map that's in test right now. That's on the bottom. You can see open space parcels in green, colleges and universities. There's one on that bottom map, University of Phoenix, New Jersey. It's a very small campus, so it's difficult to see it, but you can easily see Rutgers if you're hovering over New Brunswick. Hospital medical centers, you can see one in the top left of that bottom map, Christ Hospital. Airports, you'd be able to see if we were over one. Ferry terminals, there's one there, Newport Ferry, you can see. Lighthouses, none in this map. Also, we've added place names for the Delaware Islands. So Pat had alluded to the project we did along the boundary between New Jersey and Pennsylvania earlier. And part of that is we inventoried all the Delaware islands and put points on those centroid points on those islands, and with the labels for their names. And so we're using that as a place names data set. We're adding that to our place names data set. So that's will be in the next version of this base map. Improvements also to labeling for hydro features, local roads, and county seats. So we're really looking forward to putting out this update to the color base map. Next slide, please. So we also have the color, the light gray base map. You can see that in the upper left, very muted. So that really allows for overlaying features to stand out if you want to use that in a map or an application. Parcels base map. I had said that, we tried to make this look like a tax map. I think we were fairly successful. And so we were trying to go for a familiar look with this. So I think that turned out really well. Historical base map, which is in the second row on the left. That has a mosaic of circa 1900s. USGS topo maps for the entire state. They vary by date, but some of them are actually go back to the late 1880s, all the way up to, I think one's from 1910, and then actually have one from 1923, but all the other ones are from 1880s, 1890s, 1900s, 1910s. And then we have a series of more modern USGS topo base maps. The one in the second row to the right is something you're probably very familiar with. That's the color 24,000 scale USGS topo maps. Then we have a black and white one, which is in the 3rd row, and then there's another color topo map at the 100,000 scale, but that was not nice enough to put in this presentation. It looks pretty much like a blob. So we're going to be replacing those, I hope, sometime over the next year. If you can go to the next slide, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So the focus, the initial focus will be on updating the historic base maps. And you can see in the top base map, historic base map, that's what our current historic base map looks like. It's pretty good, but USGS has now come out with a catalog of historic base maps that they've georeferenced, and they are much sharper, and they also mosaic much more nicely than the ones that we had, the ones that we have, that we scanned so many years ago and registered. We did that from old paper maps, so, you know, accounting for shrinking and other degradation of the paper maps, we did the best we could. It turned out pretty well, but they don't mosaic perfectly, whereas the USGS ones do. So we're going to replace those historic base maps with the USGS versions of them sometime next year. There are several series of them. There's ones that are from the 1880s, 1890s, 1900s, you know, in each decade. So we may put out different series of them. Also, what I'd like to do is put out, you know, upgrades or enhancements of the more modern ones. Those are available too through USGS. So we'll be putting out much nicer looking base maps of these different series of topo maps. All right, next, if there is a next. Is that it for me?
That's it, Doug. That's it for you.
Oh, okay, one more thing. We are participating in the Esri Community Maps program. We have submitted some data sets to them. They're using our municipal boundaries, our rail lines, those are actually from New Jersey Transit, water bodies from DEP, and our road center lines. And then we're also working with Google GeoPartners operations, and they are using our administrative boundaries, our addresses, and our roads data sets. So it's nice to see our data getting out into the wider world. They're publicly accessible, so we have no problem with other folks using our data. We encourage it. All right, that's it for me.
Great, thanks, Doug. Just an add-on to that, the maps that are based on features like the light gray, the color NJ that Doug showed us, the parcel map that Doug showed us. So we've been working hard at OGIS to not only update the cartography with a lot of the enhancements that Doug showed, but also our caching process. So we've been re-engineering how we generate the cache and get it checked and verified and deployed on our servers so it's available to you. It used to take a really long time to generate the cache, and we're trying to shrink that time from when data changes to when we can burn cache and deploy it. So some work is going on there, and the next one to probably go out in prod will be the parcel map, the one that looks like a tax map that Doug showed, and then we'll work on the others. So thanks for that, Doug. Base maps are great. Sure. And why don't we take another break? We're running a little behind, but not too bad considering the discussion. Once we come back from the break, we're going to have Tom Rafferty from Office of Emergency Management share some of his work, followed by Nyanda from DEP with some info of what's going on over there. at the Bureau of GIS. So why don't we take another 5 minutes? We'll say 11:18 by my watch. If you want to take a break, grab a cup of coffee, what have you. Thanks. So while we're here, I see a question in the chat from Bo Yang. Is there a building footprint base map or feature layer available? We don't have it in one of the base maps discussed. DEP has a statewide building footprint layer that's available as part of their impervious surface data set, I believe, which you can find on Engine Open Data or the DEP Open Data site. Not sure if they have it cached, but that is statewide and available. Hey, Tom, while we're waiting, do you want to get ready and share your screen so we're ready after break?
Sure thing, Brian. Yep.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing here.
And I'm assuming you're seeing my open data page?
Yeah, yep, we see it.
Awesome, great.
So we got a few more minutes.
Yep, no problem. Brian, just to let you know, I'm running the web browser version of Teams from home, so I don't see the chat window. If there's any question that pops up you think I should address, just interrupt me, please.
Okay, yep, no problem.
Thanks.
I'm going to step away myself for a minute and get some water. I'll be right back.
Excellent.
Let's give ourselves about one more minute and then we'll get started. Okay, folks, I'm showing 11:18. Hope you had a little break, and we're going to continue with Tom Rafferty from the New Jersey Office of Emergency Management. It's part of State Police. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you, everybody, for having me. It's nice to see a bunch of familiar faces again. It's been way too long. What I want to show you today is what we've done using Esri's ArcGIS Online technology, how we've deployed that, and where we plan to go with it in the future. This project started back in late 2018, early 2019. We were using a system called eTeam to do our situational awareness and resource requests. It was a network that we had everybody from the municipalities to the counties to the states to the feds sign into, and it was based on some dated technology. The interface wasn't exactly easy to use, and there was a lot of pushback from our emergency responders about wanting to go onto a different platform. So during the summer of 2019, we looked at all the usual vendors, and as we were talking to other states, we were noticing that there were dashboards that were set up using ArcGIS Online, and they were pulling in data, be it whatever emergency management software was being used, whether it was a web EOC, whether it was Disasterland, VOCI, or any of the big players out there. And then we started talking to ourselves. It's like, well, gee, if we were to buy one of these other software companies, it would take at least 2 years before we could get an RFP out on the street, and with all the technical review that would need to be done. But we knew that every state department had Esri, and we knew that 20 out of the 21 counties did as well. So we said, why don't we start to develop something for the response side using Esri? If it works, hot dog. If it doesn't, hey, at least it's a Band-Aid. We can have something in place when eTeam goes down or when the contract expires. And then, of course, COVID hit and we were all remote. So, all of a sudden, remote technologies become very popular within the emergency management community. So we decided to go with the Esri platform for response, but there was also ways that we could push the same data out to the general public that's publicly available, and also push the same data out to our recovery folks. That's what I want to walk you through a little bit here. What you're looking at is our open data site. This site has exactly what that is, all the publicly shared data that we can view. When you go to this site and log in, you will not see all 7 of these cards. I do because I'm logged in as me as an administrator. I believe only 3 of these are publicly, maybe 4 are publicly facing right now. Like this flooding card here, you'd be able to click on it. It takes you to our application. It's nothing fancy. Here's a real-time look at the flood gauges around the state. Here's what's flooding right now. Here's what's forecasted to flood over the weekend. So you can see down at the Morris River and Bivalve, if I wanted to know what was going on there. You click on the hyperlink, it takes advantage of all the GIS stuff, and you can see this is just going to be a tidal event on Friday morning. And you can also see, if you were to click on the same gauges for the Passaic River or Bound Brook in that area, you would see that would be a longer flooding event, but the folks who live in those areas pretty much know that anyway. We developed a little quick weather dashboard for everybody, all the current flood warnings and advisories, the Twitter feeds from all the local field offices, and then a direct link also to the current emergency manager's bulletin. We're not trying to take the place of the Weather Service. They've got a lot cooler products on their site. But again, we're just trying to get a way to feed all the relevant information to our emergency managers and share that out fast without having to go through and click multiple links off of the different weather field offices in order to find that information. So this is all stuff that we're able to do and push out on the public facing side. We also developed a hub that we're calling our OEM GIS hub. And this is our password protected stuff. This is meant more for the response side of it. Again, if you were to go to this site, you would not see all these cards, and really nobody in the different agencies would see all these cards. This card was basically being developed and used for us to report the real-time numbers from the testing sites and other temporary field hospitals over to the health department so that their numbers could update in real time on their dashboard. Our search and rescue folks have developed some applications so their folks can come here and look at it. We developed right after Ida hit. The Civil Air Patrol and our aviation personnel were up in the air. So we developed a quick little card. So if any of the recovery folks needed to go in and see the extent of the damage, they could click here, up pops the map after the flooding and the tornado damage that was associated with Ida. And we were able to share this out with the state and local and county partners relatively quickly. It was really, really well received and good success. But our main project that we did was right here. It's something that we call EMIT, the Emergency Management Mapping and Information Tracking System. You know, you're in government, you have to have a acronym. So it takes you to a homepage. If you're a municipality, you'll log in, you request an account, you have to be invited into the system, and you choose the county that you're with, and now you're interacting virtually with that county's EOC. Not all counties are choosing to do this. Some counties have their own systems that they want to use, and that's fine. For reporting from the counties, from the municipalities to the county, that's the local level decision, and that's what the counties are doing. But we've provided some information there. There are ways that the county did not have a system of their own, they could tack on to what we have. Now, the counties reporting to us, to the state, that's something we are requiring them to do, because this is a system that we use. So when you're a county user or county OEM, you're going to pick your appropriate county, and that'll take you to your virtual dashboard. And that county level dashboard allows you to communicate with your municipalities and up at the state ourselves. If you're a state agency or state representative, we've got all the different departments, and you come in and you see a dashboard that's customized to your screen and to your needs. Everybody logs in, gets to see an overview of what's going on. This is real-time live information, so I'm not going to enter any reports or any data for you, but I am going to show you how the response, the emergency response community has been using it, because we had some flooding this week, and we're probably going to have some this weekend as well. Then you get your little quick weather report. You get to see quickly how many counties have their EOCs activated, how many have a state of emergency declared, and currently we have 123 resources that we've processed at the state EOC, or that we're currently tracking. A lot of these are COVID related. A lot of these are for the PPE that are required. And if you need to see what's going on, we've got these different tabs at the top of the screen. E-Team was a program where you had a drop-down menu and all the reports came up on one screen, and it was really clunky to try and figure out, where can I find my information? With the system that we've developed, we've just used Esri's dashboards and Survey 1, 2, 3 and filtering. So if I'm a county and I'm looking for something, let's say I'm Bergen County and I'm curious what types of resource requests are at the state EOC right now, I can see that they've declared, or they've requested 2 air assets. And by the color code here, I can see that was partially filled. If I was, Camden County, they've required some surgical masks and the KN95 mask, PPE equipment. So it's on scene and it's there, and it's all good to go. Now, the different state agencies have different tabs at the top of the screen when they're reporting. The different counties have different tabs on top of their screen. It just focused this menu so that it cuts out, like I said at the start, we have 123 of them active at this time. During the height of COVID, we would have had over 1,000 or 2,000 that we were actively tracking at one time. So you're able then to log in as your particular agency, and this screen will only show you what you have to worry about. You can get back to a different tab if you wanted to see the big picture. So it's really helped us focus our efforts a lot. Each county, each town around the state has to, we've asked them to report their EOC activation status. So it's really simple right now. You can see, looking at the map, where the problem is in the state. 7 counties are activated. 17 municipalities are activated. By default, we have the counties listed first, but there's a secondary tab. What municipalities are listed? And unlike E-Team, what was before, I can come in and I have the same dashboard if I'm at a county level EOC and I'm only curious about what's going on in my county. Well, now I can zoom in on the map and I can just see which one of, if I was Somerset County, this could be up on the wall in their EOC so that the county political leaders could see what's going on, as well as them having a good list or a good idea of where the impact is around the county. Likewise, here's a real-time look at where states of emergency are still in effect due to some of the flooding and some of the tornadoes. You can pretty much gather where the damage was. There was a tornado that touched down through Gloucester County. A lot of these towns up here had a few tornadoes go through, but most of these states of emergency are due to flooding. Now, this is, again, just the response side, how the counties talk to us, how we talk back to the counties, and then how the counties then pass the information out to the municipalities. So this is great for EOCs to communicate with each other during the response. But then when we try and push it over to recovery, this is where we're going to be reaching out to you or at the county level if you have not been tapped already. Right after Ida, the state of New Jersey had still has these yellow and orange bands at the top of their webpage. Right immediately after Ida, we had a page here or a link here under here that said report your damage assessment. It took you to a screen that looked like this. You clicked on a button, you were able to then fill out a form, you were able to report the damage that's happened to your home, and you were able to take photographs of the damage. It allowed our damage assessment teams to get a quicker understanding of where the damage hit, so that way we could go ahead and request money to FEMA a little bit, or assistance from FEMA a little bit quicker. We did run into a couple of issues with this. We stood this up, this page here, this publicly facing page, we stood up probably within 3 hours. Esri's technical support was wonderful during the any event. We're able to contact them. They can get a team together for us and build applications and web pages really fast. They had built this application for the state of Louisiana, and it kind of met our needs. So within 3 hours, they just tweaked it so that it had our counties in the pull down list, mentioned the word counties instead of parishes. But we also found out that there were a couple of issues. Every one of these dots on the map should be somebody in New Jersey. So either New Jerseyans have a horrible sense of direction like I do, or there were some glitches. Was it because a phone might not have been connected to the internet, wasn't getting its geolocation? Was there something fouled up from the time when the resident push submit to when it got back to the dashboard? We've troubleshot this, and we've got a pretty good understanding of where the where the bug hit in this, and mostly it was just because we rushed it in 3 hours, taking it from Louisiana to New Jersey. But the underlying data, the underlying field still kept up. So even though this guy is out here in the middle of the in the middle of the sea, we still know what town it's associated with. We still know what county it's associated with. And if we were to scroll down, okay, he didn't have any pictures on here, but it was some damage reporting. We're able then to go out and use this in conjunction with FEMA in real time to go ahead and say, yeah, this is where the individual assistance, this is where the individual homeowners or property owners had some damage and they're looking for some help to get back up on their feet. From the public assistance side, we're building dashboards like this with each county. We decided as part of the CARES funding that came through last year, we wanted to, we were spending all of this money up at the state level to develop a GIS-based system on the response side. We kind of figured that a good use of the CARES Recovery Act funding would be developing something on a recovery side. So each county, we took the pilot that Gloucester County is using. We're developing a dashboard and an application, a public facing application for each county to use for damage assessment. You take your damage assessment teams out into the field, you go over the different categories of damage that FEMA has decided. And when the folks submit their damage report right from in the field, this dashboard changes and you get to see the numbers going up. It's kind of like a telethon. You see you're matching your goal. And when you get up to the goal, that's the threshold. You have to meet a certain level of threshold in order for FEMA to come together to give you damage assessment. You can see this in near real time. The FEMA reps who are with us love this because they're able to get the damages really fast. And because of technology like this, we were able to get our request for assistance in before the other states were. So New Jersey was one of the first states nationwide for IDA, at least up here in the Northeast, who got the declaration compared to like a Pennsylvania or New York state where their declarations came in a little bit later. Like I said, we've purchased a ArcGIS Online environment for all of our county emergency management offices, and Esri's going around right now, customizing this dashboard to every county. Some of you probably have had your phone rang from your emergency coordinator saying, hey, can you provide some technical assistance to get this up and running? But this is the project that's going through, and all 21 counties are due to be online by the end of the year. Now, what does that do for you? Well, this is what Gloucester County did for a flood back 2 summers ago. And this is really what got the ball rolling on the recovery side. Joe Ward down there put his drone up in the air, and instead of waiting for the waters to recede the next day when the Civil Air Patrol could get up, Gloucester County was able to capture some really cool information. They were able to make a story map out of this. All the green dots on this map, that's where some damage occurred. You can zoom in, get a little bit of a closer look. You see the purple lines where they flew the drone. You get your, you know, your real-time or near real-time, oops, I'm going a little fast, you know, pictures. Stuff like this we were never able to document in the emergency management community efficiently right after a storm hit. Now you can. You can see over here, there's a creek. Well, by the time we normally would get our damage assessment team out in the field, all this water would be receded. Now we're able to capture it much faster and share the information all the way up to the federal government level. So they're able to determine, yeah, you know, New Jersey, you really do have a lot of damage here. And you've got the means and enough damage reached that we're going to put in for a request for you to get federal assistance, and we can start getting this process, getting back to our residents and our communities to get them back up on their feet a little faster. So it's that project, like I said, we're rolling out this fall to all the different counties. We hope to have at least a framework in place, both of a public and individual assistance component of it. So that way, for the next disaster, we can have a little bit more coordination and a little bit more real-time information about where the damage is and how much it is. So that's basically all I have, Brian.
That's great. Thank you so much, Tom. Incredible project with coordination you got going across the whole state. Any questions for Tom? Okay, well, we are going to then, I just want to put this slide up. So here's Tom's email address if you need to reach out to him afterwards with questions.
Actually, Brian, I'm going to put my current in the chat. Another thing we upgraded during the pandemic is we switched over to Microsoft 365.
Okay.
Sorry, that's an outdated email address.
Okay, so no more
my
group
current
lives for state police, huh?
Yeah, we were the last to hold out.
Okay, so Tom's email's in the chat. Please don't mind the one on the screen. That's an old one. So we're going to get to our last presenter, Niana from DEP. After that, we're finished, although if there's some last minute questions or discussion and anyone wants to stick around after Niana's presentation, we can certainly do that. So I'm going to turn it over to Niana, who I think wants to share her screen and show us some of the good work going on at DEP. Great, we can see your screen. Looks good.
Okay, perfect. Are you seeing my slide screen or are you seeing my deck?
I see a slide, data and
Okay,
applications overview.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
Mhm.
Morning, everybody. I'm Nanda Bhide from Bureau of GIS over at NJDEP. And today I'll be talking about the data and the applications overview. Brian had talked a lot about the open data, and that is available at NJDEP, but as he alluded to, NJDEP also has its own open data site, and I'll be talking about that and some of the applications. And after me, John Tarowski and Craig Kutros will talk about the ongoing and upcoming projects. So you can go to the open data site by NJDEP, or you can use the DEP's BGIS webpage link, that is nj.gov/DEP/GIS, and then go to GIS data and open data, or you can do a Google search using NJDEP open data, and that will bring you to the open data page that you are seeing here. Now, once you are on the open data page, you can search for any data that you want, and you can, as you see, there are a few tabs here. One is all, and when you click on the all and you put something in the search, it will give you whatever data and the documents, and that's what you are seeing here. But today I want to talk a little bit about the data and the document, because those two things are slightly different. So first, let's go with the data. And here I'm searching by the KCSL, and once I'm searching KCSL, here you are seeing it as a data, and when I click on it, it will open a map and it will show all the KCSL sites that are in New Jersey. And you can get all the information about it. But when you click here, I want to use this. you will see all these various links, and that's how you will be able to access that data and put that data into your applications. And this data is dynamic data. You will be able to get the REST endpoint from here too. And then if you click on this download one, you get the options of CVS, CSV, KML, shapefiles, and GeoJSON. And this data is downloaded from ArcGIS Online. But if you want to get your own copy of the file geodatabase, at the bottom, we do have this option available where you can get this file geodatabase, and this will be downloaded as a zip file on your computer, and it will have metadata too. Now let's go to the documents. So when you are searching for the data that is, say, large data set, in old days, AGO couldn't handle the large data sets very well. So to work around that issue, what we did is that we tweaked it a little bit and we put it under documents link. So when you're in the documents link, you can search for the land use land cover data, you can search for the impervious data. And as you notice here, the documents will have this icon up on top, then you know this is a large data set. And when you click on it, it will open up another page where you get all the information about about that data set. And here you will be able to download the data as a shapefile or as a file geodatabase. And once you click there, this will be downloaded to your desktop, to your computer as a zip file. And again, it will have the metadata. And you can save this one locally. Just keep in mind that this will be static data. Now let's do a search for the impervious surface, because some of these pages we have seen that even if you are in the document link, they will look slightly different. So that's why I chose impervious surface. And I saw there was a question about the building footprints. And you will be able to get to the building footprints by searching for the impervious surface. And this data set is too large, so it is divided by the counties. And once you click on the open document here, then you'll get this screen, and click on the open document again after you read all this data. Then you will see this screen. So it doesn't directly show you the map, but it gives you the ability to just download the data. And here, when you click on the open, it downloads the zip file to your local drive. Now, let's go to all the data that we have available at DEP. If you want to see, we have more than 200 data sets available here. And the complete listing of the data set you can get that one by download this data list. And it's a CSV file. There is one suggestion I'm going to do is that when you get that CSV file, don't just open it in Excel, because it looks like this, what I call it ugly, because it doesn't make much sense when you read through all this. So instead, what you want to do is that save that file locally on your computer, open blank Excel and new file, and then go to the data tab. And in the data tab, select from text to CSV. And once you do that, it comes in a nice readable format, which is much legible. As I said before, we do have more than 200 data sets available, and this list keeps changing, keeps updating. So you may want to keep an eye on this one to see what is new available. Now I want to move to some of the applications that we have developed over the last 3 years. And when you go to DEP's Bureau of GIS webpage, and when you go to the applications, you will come to this page. And on this page, you will see the link for the NJDEP ArcGIS Online Gallery. Click on that link, and that will bring you to this page where we have over 70 applications and web maps and web apps here, and the story maps. And this list also keeps changing every day. We are adding something new almost every other day nowadays. And this one started in 2018, but as you can see it, some of these applications, they were added just yesterday, you know. So you can sort this list by date modified or with the grid and take a look at it, what is new, what is available. It's an extensive list. There are few applications I would like to highlight there. So one is the NJ Big Tree. And what this one is, it's actually a repository of all the largest trees that were found in New Jersey. Now this one is also citizens, private citizens, municipalities, counties, they submitted the information about the trees. And then we put that in the map. Once you click on it, you will be able to see all the information about the trees, what needs to be done. And here, in the About one, you will be able to see all the information about those trees. So if you have any trees that you think should be in this list, please reach out to us. Let us know about the trees, and NJDEP will come out, will check it, and they will put it in the registry for you. And you can also put in the pictures of that tree or the videos of that tree with it. So it's a very good application that we just put out recently. I'm going to go back to the gallery, and there is another application, and that one is about the potential lead exposure map. And this one also put out recently. You find all the information about the application. And when I click on the view application, you get all the information about it. And if you want to go to the map about the housing age, and this one is a cool map. This one has information about all the parcels and also the municipalities. Let me just zoom in a little tight so you'll be able to see all those. Now these parcels, so when you click on it, you will be able to see it that this house was constructed in 1948. So there is a high possibility that there will be lead, because before 1950s, lead was used primarily in all the painting. So you will be able to find the information about those houses there. And you will be able to get to the municipalities, and you will be able to actually get all the breakdown for that municipality. Percentage of the houses that were built prior to 1950s, percentage of houses after that. So it's all done by municipality. Now I'm going to go back to the DEP and talk a little bit about NJGeoWeb. As most of you know, NJGeoWeb has been around for quite some time, and it has evolved over the years. This is still our flagship application. I'm not going to go through all the details about this application, but there are certain things that I'm going to highlight in this application. Those are new. So when you look at this application, and if you look at this layers list, this is an extensive layer list here, and it has been grouped. So if you want to say, find out certain layer, you have to open each and every group to find out where it belongs. But what you can do is click on this eye icon. That is not for identify, but that one is for about. And here we have layers list groupings. And when you click on that one, this one shows you all the group headings and all the layers that fall under that grouping. So this way, if there is particular layer you are interested in, you know which group to expand upon, which group to turn on. And of course, when you click on this one, you will get short information about it and the link to the metadata too. Another page I would like to show is that we have this instructional video playlist. So in addition to the tutorial we have these YouTube links and where we have the short videos of all the small things you can do it. These are like 1 to 2 minute videos, but it really shows you the tricks and some of the newer things that you can see in the application. And that's all I have for you to show. And I'm going to now ask John T. and Craig, take it from here. Thank you all.
Thanks, Niana. So John or Craig, who wants to start?
So I don't know which one of it's next, but I'll jump in here. I have only one slide. I'm going to try to do a quick screen share if I can. Let me see if I can get this up. Let me just quickly, let me see if. Well, I will try this. Is that available?
Yeah, we see it, John.
Okay, so this is my quick and dirty graphic attempt to try to reiterate that our upcoming land cover update project is the 7th in the series that the department has done. And also our feeling that each one of these has gotten a little bigger and a little better as we've gone through the processes. Most of these have really reflect improvements in the base product that we're using to do the mapping. We go back to 1986, we were mapping on a 1 to 24,000 scale hard copy grayscale photo base map. We moved through early digital projects in 1985 at 1 to 12,000 scale, and then now moving into the ortho imagery base products that we have now. That's 1 to 2400 scale, 4-band imagery at that 1 foot pixel resolution. Also reflects a lot of improvements in the tools available to us and the mapping methodology. 1986, completely analog process, done on a light table, and then subsequently digitized to make a early shapefile layer. Now we're into a primarily digital process. Even in 2015, involves some automated image processing to take a first crack at identifying areas of change. And all those things have enabled us to increase the accuracy of the mapping, reduce the minimum mapping unit so that we get a lot more detail in the output, and also increase the number of categories we map, going from about 60 in the original 1986 layer to about 90 categories that we're mapping today. As far as the 2020 project update, so we are now working with the contractor. Again, we are lucky enough to get Aerial Information Systems to work with us on the project. They have worked on every one of our land cover projects, which really imparts a amazing amount of consistency in the output and the process. So it's we're very lucky to be able to get them again to work with us on this. But we're working with them right now to do some pilot data sets. We normally do that at the beginning of a project. There's always a few modifications that we use in the workflow. And so we'll do a couple pilot area data sets just to make sure that those tweaks kind of end up in the output that they are intended to develop. But that pilot phase and the review of those, we're going to wrap up in the next 2 weeks. And then we'll go into release them to go into full production. The delivery production units and delivery units, again, will be by Huck 8 drainage basin boundaries. Certainly makes sense from kind of an ecological standpoint to use a drainage basin as the area of interest for the production units, but also, as Craig will talk about a little bit, we do harvest the water features from the land use mapping to update the national hydrography data set. And all that structure of that data set and the coding and everything is based on HUC 8 boundaries. So if we maintain that in the land use mapping, when we go to harvest those, any changes to water features, it makes that integration in the NHD a lot easier. Next 2 weeks, we'll also kind of define the production schedule and the order of HUCs that we're going to have them work on. Best case scenario, start to finish, we're looking for all the final data products in that 8 months to a year range. But as we get interim deliveries by HUCs, once we do an initial review in DEP, we'd certainly be available to distribute those as draft data. Nothing will be final till all the HUCs are done, because there's always some issues that arise in edge matching and some minor changes that may arise in some of the draft data as we go through and do an adjacent HUC. But certainly amenable to posting some of that draft data. Certainly has a lot of utility in that format to groups also. So, as I said, just getting started on kind of the full production end of it, and we will certainly keep the forum updated as we finalize the delivery schedule and start to get some of that draft data in-house. So that's it. Thanks.
Great, thanks, John. It's great to see that data set still going and there's a history behind it. And then we have Craig Koutros from DEP.
Okay, seeing that yet? Yeah.
Yeah, we see a PowerPoint, Craig.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to bounce between some applications here, but John talked about the land use that's underway, and just to go over how we've integrated the water bodies and the NHD coding to make it a little easier for us to pull the water out. So the 2015 data had the 12 and the 15s, and this was, kind of the legacy structure. And then we integrated, we used the water from the 2012, but we integrated it really in 2015. So now we're trying to maintain these attributes and coding and cut lines of the water body so that we could pull it out easier for the NHD. And we also publish the water bodies separately as well as the stream network. So the streams from the 15s were published separately, and water bodies. So there were 39,000 water bodies delineated in that layer, subset of the land use. And then all the streams, which are coded by HUC 8, were over 268,000 stream lines. All have the attributes of either a GNIS name and coding, some reach codes. So if you're familiar with NHD, they've had some schema changes, and we are going to probably be transitioning to the new schema and coding once we get the 2020 land use delivered, and we'll integrate that and also have hopefully new NHD flow lines. So if you're familiar with the NHD and the USGS sites, if you go to New Jersey, and you all know Roger, so I've been the principal steward of NHD, and I just can't give any of these jobs away. The WBD, I did find someone, and I am now training a new employee in our bureau to help with the NHD work. So we are taking the 2015 streams and water bodies, and we're going to be conflating them. We got some testing going on right now, but we're going to be conflating our lines into the federal NHD database. So what that means is if there's an existing stream that we put in there in 2009, it will get updated with the new geometry and undergo all the rules and checking that NHD has in their tool sets, and new allocations of reach codes, etc. Will all be done, and then we'll re-download that. When we get the 2020 land use back, which could be a year, so this project is going to take a year to finish. By the time we're done with this, we should have the 2020 water bodies delineated. We'll have some QC work to do on that. And then we will have to intersect all the flow lines to the new water bodies, because whenever a stream enters or a flow line enters a water body or water body area, it gets split. So I expect quite a bit of editing having to do on that. So the USGS hydrography, if you need some background, but they have various versions, NHD plus, watershed boundaries. So we're using the elevation data to help us right now. We're evaluating the HUC 14s and against our drainage lines. So we are actively starting to recommend some boundary changes between the HUC 12s and based on the HUC 14s. So you need to be a steward to get access to the USGS portal, and there is so much going on there. I get sometimes 10 or 15 emails a day from this group, either hydrography, NHD community, or the watershed boundary community. They have specialized tools, they have specialized trainings and rules for each of these ways that things are handled for updating. So a lot of this data is available through their download site, as far as even some of the elevation stuff. So NHD would be available here. I think that's all I have, Ryan. It's what we're doing with the water bodies and the streams and.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks, Craig. Thanks, John. Thanks, Neonda. Any questions for those folks at this time? So, all right, if there's no questions, we can wrap up. We do have a little bit of time, though. Brendan had brought up in the chat, if you've been following the chat, kind of a question about Daniel's Law's first time that he had actually heard about it. We talked about how we're handling that at the Office of GIS with the parcel and Mod 4 data that we distribute and make available. I don't know, Brendan, did you want to elaborate on your comment?
I was just looking into it. This is the first I've heard about it, and I'm trying to figure out. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, get people's insight as to what this all entails. Property owners lists for planning board and zoning board applications. We currently do that. Is that something that we need to redact ownership information, or is this only on a public GIS? And where would we even go about formulating lists of every retired and active law enforcement officer that lives in Toms River Township? I mean, we're a hub of lawyers and prosecutors and law enforcement officers, with having our the justice complex right here. I couldn't even imagine or fathom how we would go about being able to meet the requirements set forth in the law. I understand the law, but abiding by it may be a very difficult and challenging and daunting task. I was just wondering, like, what do we do? What has ours been? December's right around the corner.
Right. Yeah, you're not alone in having questions about it. So there are two parts of it. One, and this is an answer to Matt's question in the chat. One part already took effect, which is that if any of those covered individuals requests to have their information redacted, it has to be done essentially immediately. It's like a, I don't know, 72-hour turnaround or something. That's already in effect. The amendment that I posted the link for in the original law, it also was that took effect immediately, the part about not being able to post lists of things that included that information. That piece was delayed to December 10th by the amendment. And basically, yeah, it says no government organization can, knowingly post the name and home address of any of these covered individuals, which basically means, if you're posting every property owner in the jurisdiction, then you're knowingly, you know that includes some of those people, right? We were all hoping that there would be some more explicit guidance from the Office of Attorney General for state agencies about like how to proceed. There hasn't been much, but in the case, if you're a municipal employee, then you definitely want to ask, whatever counsel your town has for that sort of a question, to get them into that loop, because if they tell you to do something, that's going to be your answer, right? And so it's if the information that you're putting isn't openly accessible, then I don't think it's covered. It's basically the law is about posting stuff on the internet where anybody can get at it. But yeah, it hits all kinds of things, right? And as far as how do you know who to redact, we currently don't have any way to know that, and so as a result, we're just pulling out all the names out of because what we're publishing is basically the tax list, and the Division of Taxation already took down their public downloadable versions of the tax list.
Interesting.
Because they didn't have any way to identify the specific individuals either. They are working on a modification to the Mod 4 system. They don't even have a way to flag, like even if they did know who the people were, there's no way in Mod 4 to mark them that they have to be redacted. So they're making system changes to enable that to be possible. I still haven't heard of any systematic effort to identify who's covered, right? Because active are fairly easy. The payroll records for judiciary and police would be able to get at those, but even that, like municipal police, there's hundreds of police forces, and then retired, pension systems, I guess, would be the place to go. But, again, it's like, who's working on a systematic way to pull all that stuff together? I'm not hearing a whole lot. It feels to me like this law got passed and then the executive branch hasn't really come out with guidance that I've heard about.
I guess it's a safe thing would be to no longer post the owner name on the parcel base that's out in the general public, which was always a good tool. I mean, it's a step backwards. It's a draconian step backwards to make sure that we're abiding by this law.
Right.
That's the only thing that we have at this time until somebody provides us with a list of these individuals, and then we could one by one, delete them from our GIS, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing. We're pulling the names off of the, because we have
The
an
parcel base
extract
that
of
you
Mod
guys,
4 that's published, and we're just taking the names off.
that's what you're doing for your state base. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right, by December 10th. Matt, you had your hand up?
Yeah, one of the problems with any such list is that the list of employees and their adult children resident with them change daily.
Yep.
And so there's no central repository. There's no way, and it's not just the tax records. It's all of the deeds and mortgages, all the files that the clerk has about property transactions going back decades. And my reading of the law, and I've been in conversation with county council about this, is that we can expose these records still to confirmed local government employees. And so basically we're taking down public GIS for everything but parcels that we can redact systematically the owner's name. But going into sales records, the SR1As, the other records that are managed by the tax administrators, there's no way to redact those at the source. And we're federating many sources in a lot of the work that we do. And so basically, Brendan, you're right. It privatizes access to public records in New Jersey. It's tragic. It's absolutely a tragic law in terms of open public access. So, sorry for all of us.
Right. And yeah, so the question about the Association of County Tax Board site, I'm pretty sure that the language in the law is any government organization can't post this information. There's some other stuff in there about, knowing about anybody, private individuals or whatever, specifically posting individual names, which is a different story. But yeah, all those tax records that have traditionally been public. So hopefully, if in the case of the property tax records, if Division of Taxation is successful at setting up a workflow where only the individual names that need to be removed can be, that would be a better outcome. But
right,
we're a long ways away from that. Because they only release their public release of the data once a year, right? So it's not anything that they do now won't actually see the light of day until next summer when the next tax list comes out.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, the law was clearly, they didn't spend a lot of time figuring out how it was going to be
implemented.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess for now, the short-term solution is to go on our public GIS and no longer show the owner name, just to cover our tails. And it's
right.
a step backwards, but.
Right.
Yeah, we in OGIS, we were considering whether to remove all the names or whether to just select the residential properties and remove the names from that. And in the end, just, to take the safer choice, we decided to remove them all because, we didn't want to have a situation where there was something where the property class code was wrong and it really was residential, but it didn't say so. But that would be, if you're confident in your records at the municipal level, if like institutional land, right? If it's, it says the owner is, New Jersey DOT or DEP or school board or whatever, you could leave those names in, which is, still leaves it with some usefulness. We weren't comfortable doing that on the statewide data just because, we don't know how consistent it is, but at the municipal level, you might.
And in all likelihood, if you typed in a person's name and did a Google search, there's got to be some kind of record out there that will always be out there tied to or associated with someone.
Right. And that's where the law is sort of like, let's lock the barn. There's lots of horses that are already out there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your insight on this and trying to figure out a way to meet the requirements set forth by the law.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We had been doing some research work on a web tool to search all the parcels in the state by block lot and owner name, and we got it working, and it was fast through all 3.5 million records. We're really proud of ourselves, but we can't do that now, so that's gone. Okay, so this is the end of our presentation. We ran a little bit over, but not too much. Just want to thank everybody for attending. Thanks everybody for presenting. And if there's nothing else, we'll look forward to seeing you at the next forum meeting. All right, thanks everybody. Have a good afternoon.
See y'all. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so
Bye,
much.
folks.
Bye.
Everybody.
Bye, everybody. People leave the room fast when it's a virtual meeting. They don't have to wait by the door to get out.
Right. Just clicking it on.
I was on via 2 devices.